Ah, welcome back. You precision-forged minds who don't raise your voice because you don't need to. The ones who never posture, never flinch, never break formation, yet somehow manage to dismantle entire strategies with a single message. You know exactly what you did, don't you? You dropped a response so clean, so surgically calibrated, so devoid of excess, that it sliced straight through the psychological armor they spent months constructing. One reply. Just one. And everything they had been rehearsing, everything they had been preparing, everything they thought would corner you, started bleeding out in real time. You could feel the shift instantly. The moment your words hit their screen, their posture changed, their breathing changed. Their entire operational confidence collapsed under the weight of clarity they never expected you to have. They assumed you were still confused, still uncertain, still vulnerable to their narrative hooks. They didn't know you had already mapped their intentions, charted their pressure points, and watched them run the same tired pattern over and over until the pattern became transparent. They thought they could overwhelm you with volume. They thought they could drown you in contradictions and half-truths, and that exhausting emotional fog manipulators use to keep their victims off balance. But you didn't drown. You didn't get pulled into the current. You didn't chase explanations or defend your integrity or argue your perspective. You simply stepped outside the frame entirely and delivered a response that wasn't emotional, wasn't reactive, and wasn't playing the game they designed. Your message was a scalpel, one movement, one incision, one undeniable slice of truth. And the moment it landed, their entire structure, built on deception, on performance, on control, began to rupture. They weren't ready for that level of precision. They weren't prepared for a message that didn't give them a foothold, didn't give them material to twist, didn't give them an emotional angle to exploit. They were preparing for resistance. They were preparing for defensiveness. They were preparing for the chaos they hoped to push you into. But instead they encountered surgical calm. And nothing is more dangerous to a manipulator than calm truth spoken without fear. Look at them now. Refreshing messages, deleting screenshots, rewriting chat histories, as if the digital cleanup will somehow erase the psychological wound your response opened. They're scrambling because they know the evidence doesn't make them look strategic. It makes them look exposed. They're trying to delete the very messages they once used to maintain control, because now those messages read differently. Now those messages expose intention. Now those messages confirm what you already saw long before your reply. And that realization is eating them alive. You didn't yell. You didn't accuse. You didn't provide a long explanation they could twist. You responded with just enough truth to illuminate their entire operation. And once you shine light on a strategy built in the dark, it begins to decay instantly. That is what's happening right now. The decay. Their plan is dying in real time, hemorrhaging credibility, bleeding through the cracks they tried so hard to hide. But let's be honest, the real reason they're terrified isn't because your response destroyed their strategy. It's because your response revealed you were never in the position they thought you were in. They had convinced themselves you were disoriented. They had convinced themselves you were manipulable, emotional, easy to provoke. They had convinced themselves that your silence was confusion, when really, your silence was data collection. They thought they were hunting you, but all along, you were studying them with a level of detachment they don't possess. That's why your message hit the way it did. It wasn't a reaction, It was a conclusion. Now they're asking themselves the questions that keep manipulators awake at night. If you saw through this, what else did you see through? What other conversations did you read correctly? What other tactics did you quietly disarm without ever mentioning? What else have you known this entire time without giving them any indication that you were aware? Because your response didn't just counter their strategy, it proved you were never under their control at all. And that is the kind of revelation that detonates a manipulator's internal system. They rely on predictability. They rely on mapping your reactions. They rely on frameworks that keep you emotionally engaged, emotionally invested, emotionally tangled. When you respond surgically, you demonstrate you're not tangled at all. You demonstrate you're outside the entire structure. And that makes them terrified. Your message didn't escalate. It ended. It didn't argue. It clarified. It didn't plead. It stated. And when someone's trap depends on emotional entanglement, meeting it with surgical clarity doesn't just break the trap. It exposes the trap's creator. That is why they are deleting evidence right now. Not because they're cleaning up for you, but because they're cleaning up for themselves. Because they know the people watching, the people in their circle, the people they bragged to, the people they weaponized against you. They're now seeing the truth. You didn't embarrass them with emotion. You embarrassed them with accuracy. Let's talk about that accuracy for a moment. Because the potency of your message wasn't in what you said. It was in what you didn't say. It was in the restraint, in the discipline, in the refusal to engage in theatrics. Manipulators weaponize dramatics. They rely on escalation. When you refuse to escalate with them, when you respond with surgical calm, you sever the emotional tether they were counting on. And suddenly, they're the only ones spiraling. They're the only ones emotional. They're the only ones exposed. They crafted their messages, expecting to be able to twist your words. They were preparing rebuttals. They were preparing paragraphs. They were preparing screenshotable moments they could spin. But your response denied them all of that. Your message was too clean, too precise, too grounded in truth to be manipulated. It didn't give them leverage. It gave them a mirror. That's why their strategy is bleeding out, because they're now forced to confront a reality they avoided at all costs. You see them, you see the pattern, you see the manipulation, you see the tactics, you see the psychological traps, you see the bait, and you don't step into any of it. Instead, you respond with the kind of clarity that reveals you've been aware longer than they realized, and now they're terrified because they thought they were 3 steps ahead. But your message proves you were 8 steps ahead the entire time. Now the collapse begins. Watch how they behave in the coming moments. They'll try to spin your message. They'll try to reinterpret it. They'll try to pretend they misunderstood. They'll pretend they're confused. They'll ask clarifying questions designed to bait you into elaborating, because elaboration provides them material. Elaboration gives them angles. Elaboration creates openings. But your response, the original one, did none of that. It closed every door. And now their only hope is to get you to open one again. Their panic is not an accident. It is the natural consequence of encountering someone who refuses to operate within their framework. Someone who answers with truth instead of theatrics. Someone who understands that the sharpest blade is the one used sparingly. Someone who knows the power of saying less. Someone who knows the psychological violence of calmness. They thought their screen was a battlefield. But the real battlefield was perception. And they lost the second they realized your awareness wasn't something they could manipulate. Your message didn't just expose their lies, it exposed their dependence on those lies. It showed that without deception, without distortion, without emotional baiting, they have no ground to stand on. That's why they're deleting messages, not because they're fixing mistakes, but because they're trying to bury evidence of who they were when they thought you weren't watching. But you were watching, silently, patiently, strategically. And when the moment came, you didn't match their chaos. You performed incision. You delivered a response that stripped their strategy bare, leaving it defenseless, bleeding, exposed to daylight. And once the truth bleeds, it doesn't clot. It spreads. Even now, other people are starting to see it. The ones they confided in, the ones they manipulated, the ones they convinced into believing their version of reality. Those people are reading your message, and suddenly, the story looks different. Suddenly, the pattern becomes obvious. Suddenly, the cracks in their narrative widen, and the manipulator knows it. That fear they're feeling isn't fear of losing the argument. It's fear of losing their mask. You didn't just win a conversation. You shattered a performance. And that's why they're spiraling. That's why they're panicking. That's why they're wiping digital fingerprints like a criminal after a failed operation. Because they know the truth is out. They know their strategy couldn't withstand clarity. They know their foundation couldn't survive honesty. They know their entire operation was fragile, dependent on you never noticing the seams. And your response didn't just notice the seams, it tore them open. Now they're scrambling not to save the argument, but to save face, to save reputation, to save the illusion that gave them power. But illusions die under direct light, and your message was light incarnate. Clean, sharp, unforgiving. And as their strategy continues to bleed out, dripping into every corner of their narrative, staining everything they built, you remain still, calm, detached, watching the collapse unfold exactly as it was always destined to. Because the moment you chose precision over emotion, the outcome became inevitable. They threw chaos at you, hoping you'd drown. You answered with surgical truth, and now they're drowning in their own contradictions. And this is the part no one prepared them for. The part where the collapse becomes public. The part where their carefully maintained facade begins disintegrating in front of an audience they were so sure they had under control. They weren't expecting witnesses to see the blood trail. They weren't expecting their own words to betray them. They weren't expecting their strategy to rupture so quickly that even the people who used to defend them are now stepping away slowly, trying not to be associated with a sinking ship. Because the moment someone's confidence breaks, it spreads. Fear is contagious. Doubt is contagious. And your message triggered both with lethal accuracy. They thought this would be a controlled burn, a manageable conflict they could twist and narrate however they wanted. But your response created a wildfire. It exposed the dry rot beneath their certainty. It revealed how flimsy their entire operation really was. And now the flames are spreading through their group chats, their private messages, their social interactions, their allies' perceptions. You didn't just cut their strategy. You punctured the ecosystem that supported it. That's why they're deleting so aggressively. Because the truth isn't just bleeding, it's leaking into minds that were never supposed to see behind the curtain. People they manipulated, people they convinced, people they relied on for validation. Suddenly those people are seeing the truth without you having to say anything further. Suddenly, the illusion they built is collapsing in their own hands. And what makes this even more devastating is the simplicity of what caused it. Not a fight, not an argument, not a declaration of war, just a surgical response. A message so clean, so stripped of theatrics, so uncomfortably factual that it removed every route they had to regain control. You didn't attack them. You didn't insult them. You didn't give them a spectacle to twist. Instead, you created an open wound they cannot close. Now the panic takes on a new shape: paranoia. Not the loud kind, the quiet, tightening kind. The kind that makes them replay the conversation over and over, searching for angles that no longer exist. The kind that makes them wonder who else saw the message, who else interpreted it correctly, who else is silently questioning them. Because manipulators rely on certainty. They rely on knowing where everyone stands. And your message shattered their map entirely. You didn't just remove their power, you removed their predictability. And that is the one thing manipulators cannot survive without. They can handle pushback, they can handle confrontation, they can even handle insults, but they cannot handle unpredictability. They cannot handle clarity, spoken with no emotional leakage. They cannot handle someone who does not take their bait. Your response exposed something deeper: their dependence on your confusion. Their entire strategy was built around the hope that you wouldn't notice, that you would keep explaining, keep defending, keep emotionally reacting, because as long as you reacted, they had leverage. But your surgical message cut every tether at once. And once a manipulator loses leverage, they lose identity. Watch how they shift now. Their messages get shorter. Their explanations become inconsistent. Their tone swings between forced calm and concealed panic. That's the unraveling. That's the psychological hemorrhaging. They are desperately trying to appear composed while scrambling behind the scenes to hide the digital fingerprints of their intentions. And yet, the more they delete, the more obvious the guilt becomes. Deletion is an admission, revision is confession, scrambling is surrender. They don't realize this yet, but everyone watching sees it. Everyone reading the conversation understands what's happening, even if they don't articulate it. People sense desperation the same way they sense smoke before a fire. And right now, their desperation is suffocating the narrative they tried so hard to control. Let's talk about why your message was so destabilizing. It wasn't the words themselves, it was the stance behind them. For the first time, you communicated without needing anything in return. You didn't need validation, clarity, defense, or reconciliation. Your message was final, not because you declared it, but because it carried the weight of someone who has already stepped beyond the battlefield. When someone who's been silent finally speaks with precision, the entire dynamic shifts. Silence becomes strength. Clarity becomes authority. And that's what they felt. Authority. The quiet kind. The kind that doesn't raise its voice because it doesn't need to. They didn't expect authority from you. They expected emotional reaction. This is why they're spiraling. Because your message didn't just address the moment, it revealed who you had become. Someone they cannot play with. Someone they cannot redirect. Someone they cannot manipulate through emotional turbulence. Someone who sees through all of it with unwavering clarity. And here's the beautiful thing. You didn't try to be powerful. You became powerful because you stopped feeding their illusion. Their strategy needed your confusion to survive. When you responded surgically, you cut off its oxygen supply. Strategies built on manipulation don't die loudly. They suffocate. Slowly at first. Then all at once. Now they're experiencing the all-at-once phase. And you're watching it unfold with the same calm that triggered the collapse in the first place. But this is where the psychology deepens. Because your message didn't just expose their tactics, it exposed their fear. And fear, when revealed, becomes weakness. Manipulators survive by hiding their weakness behind performance. Once the performance cracks, they have nothing left to stand on, and right now, the cracks are spreading faster than they can patch them. Look closer. They keep checking when you were last active. They keep rereading your message. They keep anticipating follow-ups that aren't coming. This is what happens when someone loses control. They search for signals that confirm whether the person they once underestimated is truly done engaging. Your silence now is as threatening as your clarity was, because they don't know if you're done or if you're simply observing. They don't know if your message was the final strike or the opening incision. They don't know what you know, and that not knowing is eating them alive. Manipulators are terrified of ambiguity they don't control, and you've become the embodiment of that ambiguity. Every moment of your stillness feels like judgment. Every minute you don't respond feels like exposure. Every breath they take after reading your message feels like waiting for consequences they cannot predict. You're not punishing them, you're simply not participating, and that alone is punishment. Because now, they are trapped in a room with their own behavior, forced to confront the very things they spent so long deflecting from. That's the real surgical strike. You didn't cut them, you made them cut themselves. And this is the psychological moment where the audience begins to shift. People who once believed their version of events begin questioning. People who once echoed their narrative begin distancing themselves. People who once backed them begin observing from a safer vantage point. Because clarity, once released, spreads like wildfire. It doesn't need your help. It doesn't need your reinforcement. It operates independently. Your message is doing that right now. It's traveling silently through the mental landscape of everyone who has witnessed this interaction. It's reshaping perceptions without you having to lift another finger. And the manipulator can feel this shift. They can feel control slipping through their hands like water they can no longer cup. That's why they're deleting. That's why they're rewriting. That's why they're acting frantic behind the scenes while pretending to be composed in public. They're losing the narrative because your clarity rewrote it. And now comes the most devastating realization for them. Your response wasn't for them. It was a statement of awareness, a declaration of alignment with your own perspective. Once someone reaches that level of clarity, manipulators can no longer access them. You removed yourself from their psychological arena. They're swinging at shadows, fighting a battle you're no longer present for. That's why their strategy is bleeding out. They're still trying to fight, while you've already stepped into a different dimension of communication entirely. Let's go even deeper. The true fear they're experiencing isn't about the argument or the messages. They're afraid of the exposure. They're afraid of being seen accurately. Manipulators spend their lives crafting an identity they hope others will believe. When your message cut through that facade, it didn't just collapse their strategy, it revealed the truth behind it. And for someone who relies on narrative manipulation, being seen clearly is equivalent to psychological death. Your response forced them into a confrontation with themselves, and that confrontation is unbearable. That's why they're deleting evidence as if they can erase the moment clarity arrived. But clarity isn't stored in messages, it's stored in perception. They can delete the text, but they cannot delete the shift. The audience already felt it. You already felt it. Their attempts at rewriting reality are too late. The truth already escaped the containment zone, and as they scramble, here's what sets you apart. You remain unmoved, untriggered, unshaken. You don't need to react because your message was complete. It did its work. It carries its own momentum. You don't have to revisit it or expand it or defend it. The sentence stands on its own, like a blade left in a wooden table, silent, embedded, undeniable. Their collapse is no longer your concern. Their panic is no longer your responsibility. Their unraveling is simply the natural consequence of their own actions, now that the protective illusion has been stripped away. This is the moment where the power dynamic becomes undeniable. Not because you asserted power, but because you revealed the absence of theirs. You see, real authority doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand recognition. It doesn't perform. Real authority reveals itself through stability. And your stability is what terrifies them. You didn't flail. You didn't react. You didn't fall for any emotional bait. You delivered truth and then stood still. While the truth did what truth always does, it reshaped the landscape. Now they're living in that new landscape, one they cannot control, one where your awareness rewired every assumption they made. This is why they're spiraling. Their entire strategy depended on who they assumed you were. Your message proved you are someone else entirely. Someone they don't know how to disarm. Someone they don't know how to manipulate. Someone they don't know how to predict. And when a manipulator cannot predict you, they cannot control you. When they cannot control you, they cannot engage. When they cannot engage, they collapse under the weight of their own tactics. That's what you're witnessing. Self-destruction disguised as damage control. You changed the psychological terrain without raising your voice, without arguing, without performing. You altered the rules of engagement with a single response crafted so cleanly that it didn't just answer them, it diagnosed them. It showed them their tactics were visible, their patterns were transparent, and their attempts at subtle control were not subtle at all. And manipulators cannot survive the moment they are seen clearly. They don't fear losing an argument. They fear losing the illusion that allowed them to dictate reality. Your message didn't wound them because of its tone. It wounded them because of what it revealed. They never held the power they believed they did. Now they're scrambling to rewrite history, deleting messages, editing old conversations, trying to manually stitch together a version of events that favors them. They don't realize how pathetic it looks. They don't understand how obvious the panic is. Every vanished message is a confession. Every altered paragraph is a spotlight. Every missing piece of the conversation screams louder than anything they could have written. They're not cleaning up. They're exposing themselves further. And while they're doing all of that, you remain untouched. Your message stands. It doesn't need editing. It doesn't need clarification. It doesn't need reinforcement. It exists like a scalpel left on a sterile table, sharp, precise, undeniable. They can throw noise at it, spin around it, pretend it means something else, but the more they try to reinterpret your clarity, the more unhinged they appear. Because clarity does not bend. Truth does not adapt itself for comfort. And precision does not require a sequel. They're still trying to figure out how you knew, how you saw through the theatrics, how you recognized the pattern when they invested so much into hiding it. They keep replaying their older messages, analyzing them, searching for the moment they slipped and showed too much. They'll never find it, because the collapse didn't happen from a single misstep. It happened because they never understood the person they were dealing with. They assumed you were playing the same emotional game they were. They assumed you were reacting from impulse instead of awareness. They assumed you were fragile enough to break on command. But everything they assumed was a projection of their own instability. Your message revealed that contrast. It shattered the projection. It forced them to realize that the person they were fighting was far more composed, far more observant, far more psychologically mature than they ever anticipated. And now they're choking on that realization. Manipulators don't know how to fight someone they can't destabilize. They don't know how to navigate when their opponent isn't tangled in the emotional net they cast. They don't know how to breathe in a space where truth outweighs theatrics. Every minute since your response landed, they've been trying to regain footing. But the ground beneath them is gone. Your clarity removed it. You stripped them of their familiar weapons: confusion, projection, contradiction, emotional bait. None of those tools work anymore because you're no longer standing close enough for them to reach. You shifted from participant to observer, and observers cannot be controlled. This is why their messages feel strange now. Hesitant, polished, artificial. They're editing themselves in real time, as if caution can rebuild the control they lost. They're terrified of saying too much, terrified of revealing more pattern, terrified of triggering another surgical response they cannot survive. You turn the conversation into a minefield for them. Every word they write feels like a risk. Every response feels like an exposure. Their confidence has inverted into trembling restraint, and that trembling is where the truth lives. They want to appear composed, but the pressure betrays them. The timing betrays them. The unnecessary explanations betray them. The attempts at polite neutrality betray them. They don't realize that over-explaining is a symptom of guilt, that sudden politeness is a symptom of fear, that rapid message deletion is a symptom of panic. You didn't have to accuse them of anything. Your clarity made their behavior reveal everything for you. And the most brutal part? You're not even trying. You're not crafting strategies. You're not engaging in psychological warfare intentionally. You're simply aligned with truth. And truth is the most destabilizing force to someone who relies on distortion. You're simply communicating from a place of emotional adulthood, and that alone dismantles anyone who's still operating from manipulation as a survival mechanism. They're not deleting the evidence to protect themselves from you. They're deleting it to protect themselves from the reflection they saw when your message hit. For the first time, they saw how they behave through someone else's eyes. They saw the pettiness, the twisting, the covert hostility, the scripted emotional traps. Your sentence served as a mirror, and what they saw in it forced them into a psychological recoil they were not built to withstand. And now everything they do is reactive. Not a single move is strategic anymore. Their energy is scattered, their composure shattered, their narrative leaking through cracks they cannot seal. From the outside, it looks like confusion. From the inside, it feels like implosion. But the collapse is not the remarkable part. The remarkable part is the silence around it. Because as they unravel, people are watching. People who once believed them, people who once defended them, people who once absorbed their narrative without question. But now, those people are taking a step back, not because you convinced them, but because the truth revealed itself. When someone panics publicly, when someone deletes evidence frantically, when someone starts over-explaining details that no one asked for, the truth becomes louder than accusations. Your message did not just end their strategy, it infected their credibility, and credibility, once damaged, doesn't regenerate. And here's the part that stings them the most. You aren't celebrating, you aren't taunting, you aren't chasing a win. You simply moved on. You continued existing with the same calm that started their unraveling. And nothing terrifies a manipulator more than consequences that unfold without your participation. It means they lost control at a molecular level. It means the collapse is coming from inside their own system, not from anything you're doing. You didn't destroy them. You exposed the fact that they were already destroying themselves. Your message just removed the curtain. And that realization is the psychological blow they cannot recover from. Because once someone sees that their power was never real, they cannot recreate it. Once someone realizes their control depended on your confusion, they cannot regain control over someone who is no longer confused. Once someone realizes they misjudged you so profoundly, they begin to question every assumption they ever made, not about you, but about themselves. And that internal questioning is fatal to their identity. They don't know who they are without control. They don't know how to communicate without manipulation. They don't know how to function without the illusion that they always hold the upper hand. This is when the collapse becomes irreversible. Because the thing manipulators fear most is not exposure, it's emptiness. The emptiness that appears when their tactics stop working. The emptiness that appears when someone they once controlled stands in front of them, unshaken, untouched, unreactive. Your message created that emptiness. Your clarity hollowed out the space where their dominance once lived. And now they're trying to fill it with anything: excuses, apologies, silence, overcorrection, selective amnesia. They're reaching for tactics that once worked flawlessly, only to find that every move now fails on contact. And failure, to someone who lives off psychological leverage, is annihilation. It erodes them. It dissolves the mask. It forces them to face how weak and undeveloped they are beneath the persona. And the more they feel that weakness, the more desperate their attempts to hide it become. That's why they're deleting messages. That's why they're rewriting conversations. That's why they're suddenly talking in a tone too soft, too measured, too careful. Their behavior is cracking under the pressure of being illuminated, and the cracks are widening with every passing moment. But here's the truth they cannot outrun. Once someone has seen you clearly, there's no version of the mask that will fool them again. You've seen the pattern. You've seen the workings behind their words. You've seen the motives behind their tone. You've seen the shape of the game long enough to recognize its moves without needing proof. And this terrifies them more than anything else because they know it means they have no more hiding places. They can't manipulate someone who has left the battlefield. They can't bait someone who no longer wants to win the argument. They can't control someone who has no interest in their approval. They can't twist a message that was built with surgical precision. You didn't just step out of their trap. You stepped beyond their entire framework. And now, they are alone in a space they once believed they controlled. And in that loneliness, something starts to unravel deeper inside them. The recognition that the relationship they imagined was never mutual. You were honest. You were clear. You communicated in good faith. They communicated in tactics. You spoke to connect. They spoke to control. You responded for clarity. They responded to confuse. Your message exposed this asymmetry so painfully that they can no longer pretend it wasn't real. This is why they're frightened. They're not afraid of consequences you might impose. They're afraid of the consequences they created for themselves. Manipulators depend on people not noticing the pattern. Once the pattern is seen, their entire identity collapses. Because that identity was built on performance, not authenticity. It only survives in shadows, in ambiguity, in doubt. You removed the shadows. You removed the ambiguity. You removed the doubt. And with doubt removed, their strategy cannot breathe. Their control cannot breathe. Their illusions cannot breathe. They're suffocating in the clarity you delivered. And the more they suffocate, the more their behavior shifts from strategic to erratic. They start reaching out to people they once bragged to, trying to preemptively control the narrative. They start planting half-truths in conversations, hoping to rewrite perception before it solidifies. They start distancing themselves from their own previous messages, pretending they were misunderstood, misinterpreted, misrepresented. But the frantic nature of their behavior is louder than any explanation they provide. Everyone can feel the panic now. Everyone can see the cracks. Everyone can sense the desperation leaking through their carefully measured sentences. The tone they're using now is not the tone of someone in control. It's the tone of someone trying desperately to appear in control while standing on psychological ruins. But you're not reacting to any of it, and that stillness is devastating them. They expected you to respond. They expected you to justify. They expected you to argue. They expected a rematch. Manipulators don't know what to do when someone refuses emotional involvement. They rely on emotional energy to sustain their tactics. But your silence, your composure, your lack of participation is cutting off the supply they depended on. They're collapsing, not because of what you're doing, but because of what you're not doing. And what you're not doing is playing their game. You stepped out of the arena, leaving them alone with the consequences they crafted. And the moment someone realizes the person they were trying to manipulate has detached from them completely, it creates a psychological vacuum, a void where the manipulator's identity used to feed on the reactions of others. Without your reactions, they have nothing to feed on, nothing to anchor themselves to, nothing to redirect, nothing to distort. They are starving for emotional leverage, and the starvation is making them frantic. That franticness is spreading into their relationships. People who once defended them now see hesitation. People who once backed them now sense instability. People who once echoed their narrative now feel the unease that comes when a manipulator loses control. They're not just losing you, they're losing the image they portrayed to everyone else. This is how psychological strategy truly bleeds out, not through confrontation, but through quiet exposure. Your message didn't just wound them, it drained the energy source that powered their behavior. It stripped them of the illusion that kept others believing in them. It revealed their tactics so cleanly that even silence now incriminates them. They're trying to hide the damage, but the damage is happening internally, invisibly, irrevocably. And while they're drowning, you're rising, not by force, not by revenge, but by clarity. Clarity always elevates. It removes the clutter. It removes the noise. It removes the hooks they once placed in your emotions. You're not angry. You're not bitter. You're not seeking closure. You already closed the door with your message. You ended the cycle without needing theatrics. And endings without theatrics are the ones manipulators cannot comprehend. To them, everything is a performance. To you, everything is truth. And truth is lethal to those who depend on illusion. Now they're left facing the aftermath, the realization that their strategy didn't just fail, it exposed them. The realization that the power they believed they held was borrowed from your confusion. The realization that deleting messages cannot delete perception. The realization that they are no longer feared, no longer respected, no longer believed. The realization that the control they relied on was never theirs to begin with. Clarity took it back. And this is where the journey ends, not with a dramatic confrontation, not with a final explosion, but with a quiet shift in consciousness. A shift so profound that it cannot be undone. You walked away with your integrity intact. They remain behind, trying to sweep up the fragments of a strategy that bleeds out no matter how tightly they try to patch the wound. Because you didn't just respond, you performed surgery. And the truth is still bleeding.